Hey guys, thank you for your presentation, and thank you first of all for being here.
One.
One what?
1 2 1 2.
Yeah.
Sound check.
One of the biggest burdens or obstacles that all of the innovations in any country is facing, that's the common question for both of you, is the legislation and the politics. If we take a look at the UK, there's innovating hubs, there are a lot of innovation process, but a lot in many ways and in many times, the technique and the innovations are far in front of the legislation. So what's the situation in UK regarding creating new processes, bringing new innovation, etc., etc.?
Yeah, in the UK at the moment, we're in a period of change because of the dreaded B word. So Brexit means that at the moment we've adopted the European regulations, but actually we may also adopt the American FDA regulations going forward. It doesn't help us in terms of setting the agenda, but what I can say is that it's very likely that as Europe legislates on things like e-health solutions, the UK is likely just to mirror what Europe is doing, at least for the time being.
It's mirror or the leader?
Pardon? I think it would mirror. I would love to say. I mean, we might lead in terms of some of the innovations that are coming out, but the reality is now that we don't have a say over regulation anymore, we have to be compliant. So our companies have to comply with the European regulation rather than influencing it. So we do have people who are trying to set the agenda with new regulations, and they're trying to influence the EMA. But the reality is, I think, and it's possibly a good thing for the Slovakian innovators, because it means that if you have a compliant product in Slovakia, it's almost certain to be in the UK too. So we are trying to help evolve regulation, but the reality of Brexit, the decision that the country made, is that we've lost a lot of our ability to do that.
One additional question: would you say that the current UK healthcare market is over-regulated, under-regulated, or ideal?
I think some areas are very heavily over-regulated. I would, for example, I showed the example in my talk of 3 materials that the risk profile is actually the same. But the way that is regulated, the development costs for the first product is probably a factor of 1,000-fold less than the second and the third products along. So that kind of low-risk product is very over-regulated. At the minute, I actually think probably a lot of our e-health solutions are under-regulated.
Adam, what about Israel? But you've been working also in other countries, but let's focus on Israel now.
I think Israel is not a market of itself for innovation. I mean, we use our own innovation and we create a lot of innovation, but we always look at the United States. This is our mother. So their regulation is our regulation. Doesn't matter if we can do anything we want, but we're like 9 million people.
So you're basically adopting any regulation that the US government is imposing, you're imposing as well?
No, we don't adopt it. We can use our own thing that would not fly in the United States.
You wouldn't be compliant, right?
Yes, but if it won't work in the United States, then why should we build it? It doesn't make sense, because that's the market we usually aim for. Sometimes we work, of course, with Europe, which has a few simpler ways of doing things, but we usually aim high for the US.
We are comparing Slovakia with Israel, especially with the focus that Israel and Israeli people has also always had to adapt. So also I would say that Israeli legislation regarding the innovation and the healthcare might be pretty flexible, or am I mistaken?
You're talking about the Israelis?
Yes. Yes, Israeli with comparison with Slovakia, because I know that you are not here for a long time, but you know the backward.
I think Israelis are, if you look in history, we arrived there like 80 years, 90 years ago. We did not have a government or anybody to wait for to do stuff for us. It's made out of people who came from Europe and started doing things with their own hands, and that's the culture. So We don't sit around and wait for anything. We take action ourselves, which has good sides and has also bad sides. But what I see from Slovakian entrepreneurs and people in healthcare, if I had to put one problem that Slovakian people have, and they have a lot of talent and a lot of
also a lot of problems.
Goodwill. What?
Also a lot of problems.
Yes. But the one thing is that you guys seem to be waiting for something, for someone. And it's always has to do with the government or the politics, or everything needs to be complicated, and that just doesn't work. So I came here to do groundwork, to run on the ground, do the work, start with a hospital. A hospital can start its own innovation. It doesn't need to wait for anybody. And once we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 30 hospitals, then innovation will be there. And then the government will see, okay, these guys are moving around. They're doing a lot of stuff. We have some money here. Let's give them some money and see what really happens. So it's just a reverse thinking.
You know what Ronald Reagan says? The government cannot solve any problem. The government is the problem.
You said it.
Ronald Reagan did. I would never say that. Liam, people in Europe are usually taking a look at UK as the inspiration. It's historically something that it's settled. But in the case you are taking a look from the UK perspective, which are the countries that you would consider to be innovative in healthcare? Don't mention Israel, we know about that.
Of course, Israel and Slovakia, so no one pelts me with fruit or anything. Yeah, from my perspective, the home of or where most innovation is happening, I think you have to be realistic. It's the US, or innovation that's making an impact. I don't think that necessarily means that great science isn't happening elsewhere. I would say that what's available in the US is investment funding to develop that great science. So we see more and more companies being, my own company, one of my own companies, exploring settling in the US to try and lever some of the investment there. So great innovations will go wherever the investment is to get that innovation to market, because medical technologies require a significant amount of investment. Companies tend to cluster around the Boston area, for example. So from my perspective, that's where the great innovation is being valorized or being exploited. But you see great examples across the UK and Europe of cutting edge innovation. We're just not always great at commercializing it. An example of a European and British innovation that was commercialized in the US was monoclonal antibodies, invented in Cambridge. Oh, there we go, you can hear me now. Invented in Cambridge and actually exploited in the US. So I think, the reality is you can have great early stage innovation. Those innovators will go where the money is. And that's the thing that we need to try and solve.
Basically, as far as I understand, one of the main reasons why the United States are so successful regarding innovation is the funding, because they let the market do the job and they do not put too many obstacles in the way of the market. So in the case, the US is sort of a role model for the rest of the world. So are we adopting those standards? Are we trying to catch up with the United States? Because my impression is that United States thinks about it, China creates it, and Europe regulates it.
That could be right. I think if you look at the sort of state of innovation across the US, and then you compare it with the rest of Europe, actually at a university level, so that the institutes that are creating the innovation, they're all creating great innovation. So the question has to be, why aren't those innovations transferring from university onto the market, or why are they moving to the USA? I think a reflection I have, and something I'm trying to change in the UK through my own institution, and it's happening slowly, is that a lot of European universities are unreasonable about what sort of stake they should take in a company. So in Birmingham now, we're down to 20%. That is from 50% about 3 years ago. That is an uninvestable position. There is no investor in their right minds will invest in a company where 50% is owned by an entity that's not going to do anything. So actually, I think in Europe, we need to look at structuring companies that come out. We're having to restructure a couple of our companies because investors are saying to us, in order to take a raise for us, we need to say that see that the university has been diluted down to a certain level. So I think actually there's a lot of work to be done in Europe in trying to educate institutions like universities to set companies up with a structure that is exploitable.
So basically, we should start fighting with the market and the university should start cooperating with the market and creating some sort of university hubs.
So the university should be realistic, so there is...
And they are not
educated,
right
because I've been fighting this in Israel, the exact same thing. And I told the universities, you guys have to understand the game you're playing. We're playing soccer and you keep touching the ball with your hands. That will not fly, that will not work. You need to go down with what you ask for, and then you will have less, but from more companies. This is just stupid mathematics. It's education, and he's totally right.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the US situation, a 5% equity stake for a university is actually high. So we've got a long way to come down.
So just 5% of the equities from the US, from the university funds?
No, I mean 5% of a company that comes out of a university is owned by the university. So in the UK, we're getting down to 20 and 30%. I was on a panel that assessed a major research institution in the Netherlands. The university takes as standard 65% of the company. You're setting the company up to fail.
No, yes, of course, but they just don't understand the game. Yeah. And I remember clearly, because I'm one of the first startup companies when the eco startup started in Israel. It used to be like that with VCs as well. Yeah. Like VCs didn't understand, and investors thought they should take the biggest bite. Now, if I go to an investor and he says, that's a great thing, I'm going to give you 1 million euros, I want 50% of the company, and he keeps on talking, I would just smile and get up and leave the room, because this guy is not a professional, he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's totally crippling the company and destroying it. It doesn't matter the content of the company. So a dumb investor, and today the universities are a dumb investor, that's all.
I love one example regarding innovation. Our friend, who many of you know, Robo Chovanskouek, is from INES. He wrote a book that's called The Progress Without the Permission. And the story behind it is that when Bolt and Uber entered the market, they've been breaking all of the rules. They knew that they cannot run this company in this legislation. So they've been breaking everything, and then the legislation has adopted. But the clue was, or the key was, that the people started to like it. Even the taxi drivers, they've been protesting all around the world. Now they are all driving for Uber and Bolt. So can we say it's the same with the innovation, that maybe innovation hubs, etc., maybe even, and it is very ethically challenging, should we start to ignore legislation in order to make a progress?
I think that you have to be very careful in medtech, because it's not a ride-sharing app. It's people perhaps going blind because you're...
but the principle.
Yeah. I think the principle of pushing regulation is important. There's quite an on one of the slides I showed of the barrier spray. That's physical barrier spray, class 1 device. I wrote a scientific paper about that barrier spray stopping fibrosis. Didn't tell anyone about it. Patients started using it automatically to stop fibrosis, right? So we have patients in the UK now and across Europe who are using it to heal their mouth. If we started off with the intention of having an intervention to stop oral fibrosis, it wouldn't be on the market yet. So that is an example of pushing it a little bit. We haven't done anything wrong because we haven't claimed anything. And there is the ability now, with the way people communicate in groups and the availability of information on the internet, where you can actually take sort of low-class interventions like a barrier spray, and then explore or almost explore what they can be used for. So that spray is now being used for allergy. We never said that, but people found it for themselves. Then they communicate it to others, and all of a sudden there's a whole community of people using it. So you do have the ability, I think, to some extent, to work with within the regulations and push them a little bit. But I think you do need to...
Isn't it inevitable to push the legislation as much as possible? Because I'll give you the example from the Slovakia. In Slovakia, and there are many doctors here, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know without telemedicine, or is this the correct expression? Telemedicine? You know, the distance medicines, it is still more or less illegal, despite the fact that it is here and the people are using it, people demand it, so there has to be some sort of pushback, but I don't know what certain level it should be on. Adam?
I think it's legislation, all that stuff needs, it's a game. It's a pressure game. It moves where the people move and the needs move. And the more there's a bigger need and it's illegal or there's a problem, then legislation and everything kind of starts bending. It takes just time. That's the only thing which sucks about it. But it's a game. It's always changing, and we are the ones that change it by our feet, like we vote with our legs. That's the game.
And basically, every country in the world, or definitely the vast majority of them, is facing the same issue or the same problem. We do not have a sufficient amount of doctors. We do not have a sufficient amount of nurses, but we are exporting quite a lot of the UK, so we are a little bit better. So, is the innovations, technique, AI, etc., already the solution to the current problem that we are facing with the human resources?
I think it's part of the solution. I sit on UK funding panels looking at innovations that are coming through, that are going to be funded to accelerate the development of. So many of those are about handling the patient pathway. So whether it's diagnosing, making sure they get treatment more quickly, generally without human intervention where possible. So I think we're going that way, and I think it is one part of the solution. At the end of the day, when people are seriously ill, they're going to need to have contact with doctors and therapeutics. But it might help overcome some of the overburdenedness by being able to direct patients better and manage them better.
Yeah, I agree. I think innovation is the solution, period. Because innovation is a new type of intelligence in healthcare. So it takes everything, it calculates it, it can solve many different types of problems. Of course, innovation is startups, ideas, materials, new ways of treating, but this is just a part of it. This is just like, let's say, products. What about innovation that needs to get in more money and new revenue models for the hospital? What about new problems that arise with endless and countless things? So innovation, I think, is a new kind of intelligent brain that facilitates all kinds of problems. And of course, many of those are projects and products and research and all that stuff. But I think the innovation is the cure to most of these problems.
The common question for both of you, basically, what's the situation in UK and Israel, but also maybe in other countries, in a way regarding the perception of the people towards, for example, wearables, AI, etc., in medicine? Because in Slovakia we are pretty adaptable. That we like the new trends, we like to try them, to measure them on ourselves, etc. So what's the perception of the UK population regarding the innovations, regarding that you do not have to see your practitioner, you do not have to see the specialists, you can do it throughout the distance?
Yeah, I think to some extent in the younger population, it's becoming normalized. I mean, I have a wearable on now. People are wearing, Apple Watches and so on and so forth. So I think it's becoming normalised. We see some reticence in some of the older population, but I think even there, actually, things are moving forwards. So I think there's quite a high degree of public acceptance. If anything, I think people are probably putting too much at this point faith in AI and what it can achieve.
I agree. I see it in both ways. I see on one side, doctors are worried that some of this technology will replace them, and they're afraid, which is silly, because if today you're a doctor and you're treating 10 people a day, with technology you can treat 100 people a day, and always saying there aren't enough doctors, there isn't enough money, so this makes you work better and faster. So there's no reason to be afraid of it, and it doesn't put doctors away. And regarding treating people from home and wearables, I think this is the future, not in any shiny, beautiful way. It's just, it's cheaper to have somebody monitored at home than all the time at hospital. So it's part of the treatment at home, and it will make available more medicine at home and in the hospitals.
Thank you so much. The AI is crucial because in AI would be running this panel that would find out that we are already 10 minutes longer than we should be.
That would happen if AI would.
Yeah, but they didn't play music, so it's just partly my fault. Thank you, Liam, and thank you, Adam, and thank you for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.